Okay, so we've begun the recording of today's program, and we will begin with our first presentation for the Lingo, Language, and Dialect, celebrating CU's linguistic diversity. So I'm going to turn it back over to Dr. Sowmya Anand and her students to talk about Hindi language.
Thank you, and I'm just, I don't know if I'll do my pretend intro again, but I wanted to introduce my other parent volunteers who are part of the Hindi group, Nina and Millie, and their children are with them today. And, our language group is small and informal, and the kids are going to, sort of present a little bit about, in Hindi, a poem and things like that to sort of showcase what it is that they learn as part of these classes. Nina, if you want to go first, you can.
Yes, so Arya is going to say a poem in Hindi. Do you want to go ahead? You can start. Okay.
मछली जल की रानी है, जीवन उसका पानी है, हाथ लगाओ तो डर जाएगी, बाहर निकालो तो मर जाएगी, वापस डालो तो तैर जाएगी.
Yes, so that was a poem about fish, and it basically, if do you want to translate it, Arya? Say what it means.
I don't know the first part.
Much fish is the queen of the sea.
Fish is the queen of the sea. If you put your hand on it, it will get scared. If you take it out of the water, it will die. If you put it back in the water, it will swim away from you fast.
Yeah.
Escher is going to say a poem. Nish, you want to go ahead in Hindi?
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
Dobiaya.
Go ahead. It's okay.
Dobiaya kitne
कपड़े लाया?
कितने कपड़े लाया? 1 2 3 1 2 3. दोबिया कितने कपड़े लाया? 4 5 6 4 5 6. दोबिया कितने कपड़े लाया? 7 8 9 7 8 9. दोबिया कितने कपड़े लाया? 10 10.
Tell me what this poem is about. Laundry man, right? Yeah.
It's about a laundry man.
Okay, and it's a counting, right?
Okay. It's 1 2 3 and then 4 5 6 7 8 9 and then 10.
That was wonderful job to both of our special poetry readers. Did you have any concluding remarks, Dr. Sowmya Anand?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that, so all of the families here, we're sort of multilingual families in that the parents are not from the same part of India. And as you know, in India, it has many languages, but the national language of India is Hindi. And so we were all trained in Hindi. So that seems to be the common language that we speak with our spouses. And so our interest was in having our kids be at least familiar with that one Indian language. Even though, for example, in our household, we speak Tamil and Punjabi. But everyone grew up in Bombay in our household. Well, my spouse and I grew up in Bombay, so we both know Hindi. So it was it's hard, while it's hard to teach children who are growing up in a different country all possible languages, it seems very easy in India because the kids are immersed, right? So most kids grow up in a situation where they're exposed to 2 3 4 5 languages, and they seem to pick it up very easily. And I've heard that one of the best predictors of how kids pick up a language is what their peers speak. So clearly we're missing that peer aspect, in a different country where the language spoken is different from what you would speak in your country. So that's what we're trying to do in the Hindi class. And they speak, I want to say, I think the kids speak really well. They understand really well. Getting them to speak it in public is, one of the things we're working towards, because obviously it does, fluency matters to them. And we're hoping to build it so they be comfortable speaking it in more and more forums. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you. And the kids did a great job, which I'm not surprised about at all.
Thank you so much. And I can relate as a language student, speaking in public, the first time you have to speak in front of someone other than your teacher it makes you so nervous. So it's particularly inspiring that they were able to recite something online for all of us adults. Well, it is my honor and privilege to introduce one of my very best colleagues in the library. So Dr. Atoma Batoma is an associate professor at the University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign. He is currently the African Studies librarian in the International and Area Studies Library. He holds a PhD in philosophy from the University of Liège in Belgium, and another new challenging city name for me. And an MS in Library and Information Science from the UIU Graduate School of Library and Information Science. He has published several articles in the area of onomastic science, including articles on the naming systems and practices of the Gaviāo of Northern Togo. He speaks Gaviāo, his mother tongue, and several other languages, including French, English, German, some Swahili, and he's currently learning Spanish with passion and intensity. So Atoma, we will love to hear your remarks.
Yeah, can I show my PowerPoint though?
Yes, you should be able to share screen.
All right, here it is. Can everybody?
Yes, we can see it.
All right, okay. So I just want to talk about my mother tongue, right? And because I want to talk about my mother tongue, I want to talk also about my mother. And for first reason is because my mother tongue is, as the name indicates, it's the tongue of my mother. I mean, that is what I want to question. I want to discuss the very concept of mother tongue. But also because I realize that this month is Women's History Day. And so that is one reason also why I want to talk about my mother. Now, I very often, in times of uncertainty and solitude, I often find myself speaking to myself in Gaviāo, which is my mother tongue, my native language, a language that no one else in this community speaks. So sometimes while taking, for example, a shower in the morning or walking around the quiet village of Savoy, I unconsciously start singing to myself a song that my mom used to sing before going into labor. She will always end her song with the following sentences that left a long-lasting imprint in my psyche since my childhood. So she will say, it's like, no matter where you end up in the world, no matter the circumstances you find yourself in, always remember that you all drank from the same maternal fountain and that you all spoke the same language, your mother tongue. Now, I want to show here the place where I was born. I was born in Kokude, a mountainous village located in the northern region of Togo in West Africa, in this region, right? Now, the village had no road in the modern industrialized sense, but rather multiple dirt pathways that led into the field of millet, yams, cassava, and other subsistence crops cultivated by the farmers. Other paths, better managed and maintained by community effort, led to the 6 marketplaces located in other villages and named after the 6 days of the Gaviāo traditional week. These marketplaces were and still are a regional hub for commercial exchanges where the farmers will go sell the surplus of their agricultural production and or buy whatever necessity they lacked, including imported non-agricultural goods. Now, the village had no running water, no wells, but a few ponds that gathered water from the rain during the raining season. At dawn, these ponds were busy and lively places where my mom and my sisters would go fetch water and exchange early morning heartfelt greetings with other women of the village. We had no electricity, but those village dwellers who could afford the price of kerosene will use lanterns to find their way around their house in the pitch darkness of the night. Fortunately, some of our nights were illuminated by the moon and the stars that looked brighter and closer to humans than I have ever seen them after I left the village, shining the blessing on the nightly storytelling sessions and other educational events that were an integral part of my childhood. Now, my mother. My mom was a small but strong and hardworking woman. She came from Escher, another village located miles away to marry my father who was captivated by her irresistible beauty and addicted to her high quality saloon, the local millet beer that she will brew and sell on the marketplace where they met. In Kukude, my village, they call her Aseretu, which means the woman from Escher, or just Escher for short. So my mom's name encapsulated that's a name, a personal name, and the name of the people of her village. So as the onomastic jargon has it, her name was a toponymic ethnonymic anthroponym. My mom's outside status increased her sense of self-awareness and of being different, which in turn generated in her a feeling of relative independence and even audacity manifested in the expression of her thoughts and opinions. She enjoyed wide respect in the village, a respect that was sometimes mixed with fear of her otherness. Unlike me, but like my 2 daughters, she was a strong-willed person, somewhat stubborn, but very generous person. Unlike me, but like my 2 daughters, she was pretty much in control of her endeavors and wouldn't let anyone interfere with her sense of purpose. Our family, my mom gave 9 beautiful children to the village of Kukude. Most of us were born at night under the welcoming smile of the moon and the cheerful approval of the twinkling stars. Others were born at dawn and the frightening scream caused by the sudden discovery of the daybreak was mixed with the cacophonic song of the birds, which were awakening the still sleeping village dwellers. As with everything else, my mom was in control of each and every one of her 9 pregnancies. About an hour before her water broke, she will take 2 or 3 walks around the compound of houses that make up our homestead, followed by us, her bigger children, who were eager to accompany her in her slow but ritualistic journey to meet the long-awaited newcomer. We knew that the journey was drawing to a close when my mom will send one of us to fetch the midwife. During her walks, my mom will sing a song modulated by her moans brought up by the pain of the strengthening contractions. She will end it with the same 3 sentences that at times sounded like an injunction or a warning, and at times like a request or a prayer. Always remember that you all drank from the same maternal fountain, that you all spoke the same language, your mother tongue. We will sing along, although not understanding the meaning of the lyrics, nor knowing who the addressee was. As I realized later, much later, her songs were addressed to the not yet born members of our family. The song included the utterance of our names, the names of unborn child siblings in waiting. She will explain to them the reason, the metaphysical reasons why each of us chose to come to the world through her. The song thus was a prenatal introduction of the not yet born individual to our family. The language. I have never paused until later, until my mom passed away, to ponder the deep meaning of her childbirth song. I was busy pursuing my education, attending schools located in places far away from my village. The school they called the white man schools in my language. But what did my mom mean by maternal fountain and mother tongue? As I later gathered from local knowledge backed by common sense, the metaphorical name maternal fountain referred to my mother's milk, my mom's breastfeeding that nurtured us and made us who we are today, no matter where we are. But what about tongue, mother tongue? What did she mean by mother tongue? Could mother tongue mean the Gaviāo language, which was and still is the indigenous language of our community, as opposed to French, which she resented because as kids, we were obligated to speak it all the time under pain of severe punishment from our school teachers, whose job was to make us speak it like the colonizers. Could it be the Gaviāo spoken with the local accent of Asere, a village of origin, and for which she was always teased in Kukude? Or was it something else? A secret semiotic link that was supposed to keep us close as a family for the rest of our adult lives, no matter where we were and what circumstances we found ourselves in. I'm still pondering the meaning of my mom's word whenever my mother tongue speaks to me. For almost 20 years now, I have been traveling from language to language in search of that semiotic link that must undergird every mother tongue of the world. I have so far visited five languages. I have scrutinized their syntax, deciphered their semantics, and listened with an indescribable pleasure to the diverse melodic prosodies, always attentive to their differences and similarities. This in order to help me discover the mysterious relationship between Dodo and Yoda, between mother and language. Spanish, a Romance language, by placing an adjective before mother, like in lingua materna, like it's a congeneric sister French, langue maternelle. So Spanish teaches us that mother is a qualifier, that it qualifies the language. On the other hand, German, a Germanist language, by using the genitive case, Muttersprache, like it's a congenital brother English, mother tongue, seems to consider the mother as the possessor or owner of the language. Swahili, a major indigenous language spoken in the eastern region of Africa, by introducing a preposition, the preposition ya, between language and mother, like luhaya mama, seems to indicate that the mother is the origin, the authorized origin of the language. Leveraging my years-long experience with a few languages, I return now to Gaviāo, my mother tongue, and to my mom's conception of it. I notice now that the formulation of its very name, Dodo Yoda, includes the use of the gerund, which makes the relationship between mother and language an active relationship, an act, indeed a speech act. Thus, beyond being a qualifier, a possessor, the origin, mother is an actor, an agency. So to speak another tongue then is to speak a language with the agency of the mother. But I have a few more languages to visit, and I will report back to you any new discovery of my adventure. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Atoma, for sharing that presentation.
You're welcome.
Yeah, that was a very interesting connection and breakdown, the relationship between mother tongue and actual your actual mother. Up next, we're going to have a presentation from the Bloco Gaviāo music group. Yeah, I've already forgotten. The Bloco Gaviāo is a community samba group working in coordination with the Capoeira Angola Center, Illinois, and Contramestre Dennis Chiaramonte, as well as the Robert E. Brown Center for World Music. They've served over 400 people from the CU community, giving them hands-on experience with musical arrangements inspired by the richness of the Afro-Brazilian cultural diaspora. Their goal for their work in the community is to shape Ashe, a Yoruba word which we translate as the energy that gives life. So I'm going to turn it over to their representative, Leonardo Ventura. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, everybody. Good afternoon. I will just share.
You kids a little restless, and we want all of them to be here present till the end.
Do you want me to sing it now or no?
Yes, please go ahead till I'm going to let Leonardo go ahead and share his screen, but we can listen to Katherine as it is because, and that way we can do both and catch up with time. Please go ahead, Katherine, and you can tell us what you're going to sing. All right, go ahead, please.
Okay, so I'm going to be singing El Pericotito, and it's a Spanish lullaby
I love
about
that song.
it's about a cat and a mouse, and the cat's going to eat the mouse. So I'll just go ahead and sing the song now.
Sure.
Un pericotito gracioso, bonito, y saca su piquito por un huequecito. El gato travieso apenas lo vio, le dio un zarpazo y se lo comió. Le dio un zarpazo y se lo comió.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Katherine. And your entry is wonderful too. So thanks for that wonderful entertainment in between. Let's go ahead with Leonardo. Sorry about that. You are muted,
Are you
Leonardo.
listening to me? Are you seeing the screen?
Yes.
So let's go. So we are Bloco Gaviāo. We started at 2019. Our first workshop was on 2020, but it had to stop because of pandemic. We are a Bloco Gaviāo is a community samba group working coordination with the Capoeira Angola Center and Contramestre Dani Chiaramont, as well as the Robert Brown Center for World Music. We launched our music class in summer of 2021 in partnership with Superlock Museum, but we needed to enlarge the place because we were having too many people doing the class, and then we moved to Granite Center in fall 2021 with 5 sessions and then 10 sessions still in fall 2021, and now we are practicing with our short group to our presentations in Casa Latina. Yes, Casa Latina. So our objective is to share the Afro-Brazilian Escher, music, culture, language, and history in our music class. So the name Bloco Gaviāo is in tribute to the Mestre João Grande, Mestre de Capoeira. He's a master in Capoeira, one of the many people that widespread Capoeira in the world. And that's just mainly in New York City. He's now teaching class of Capoeira. So Gaviāo was one of his nicknames. Yes, to understand what you are practicing in our class, it's important to talk about African diaspora. So in the Atlantic slavery, around of 4 million people or Africans were forced brought to Brazil. So Pernambuco, Bahia, Rio de Janeiro, São Paulo was one of the main ports that they came, and one of the main nations or ethnicities were the Fon people, Yorubas, Balubas, Bakongos, Bakuba, Lunda, and Kimbundu. So in the 19th century, until the 60s of the 19th century, African descendants, and indigenous formed around of 75% of the population. So for the most of the people, and they are key for the formation of Afro-Brazilian culture, language, and music. For example, maracatu, samba, reggae, and afoxé. That is the traditions and music that we are practicing in our classes. So the first image in the left is an image of samba reggae. Samba reggae started in the 70s in Bahia, northeast of Brazil. Was an influence of reggae, Rastafari movement, and also the Black movement in the USA, the Black Power movement. So it was a time that Black people in Bahia was starting to have to I forgot the word, sorry. But they started to get his roots, African roots. So embody the African roots, the blackness in the 70s in Bahia. The second image in the left is an image of Afro-Share. We played some arrangements of Afro-Share too in your class. Afro-Share also is in the same page of blackness in Brazil and this connection with Africa because of the music that they play is our music from Candomblé. So that is an Afro-Brazilian religion, and they play these music in the streets. The music that they are allowed to play because it's centered in secret. So it's not everything that you can talk with people that is not initiated. But the parts that they can share, they share with people in the streets, in Carnival. The second image in the right, that we have a king and a queen, is Maracatu. They call it the Maracatu nation. That is the roots of Congo people, Bantu people, and also the Congo kingdom. So they still preserve this celebration of the royalty. Yes. And as a Brazilian musician says, Emicida, we are descendants of queens and kings. So this is a frame of the celebration of this ancestrality. And the first image on the right is one of our practice in quality for performing arts. So yes, so here we have some videos here. So this music is just try to translate. It's named God of Love, Deusa do Amor in Portuguese. It's a guy that fell in love with a woman in the carnival, and he gave this name to her, like that she was a God of love, and he's talking about this passion in the music. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Let me introduce Mohan Tracy. Mohan Tracy was born and grew up in Malaysia. She has a BA in history from the University of Malaya, Kuala Lumpur, and an MA also in history from the University of Wisconsin-Madison. In 1967, she married David Tracy, a Peace Corps volunteer, and moved to the United States. She's worked as a school teacher in Malaysia and England and at the University Library in Madison. Mohan and David moved to Champaign in 2012 to be closer to their son's family when Mohan discovered the joy of fabric quilting. Since then, she has exhibited in several art shows and was one of the 12 artists chosen to display her kite mobile sculpture, Waiting to Fly, in the 2021 Art Doors program. She is enjoying her time here with family and joyfully keeping busy with art. Mohan Tracy, thank you so much for being here, and I will turn it over to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm very glad that I was invited to be part of this project. It's a language is a reminder of our roots. And when I listened to Sowmya, I think it's wonderful what you're doing, teaching Hindi to children. And it reminds me of my grandmother in Malaysia. That's what she did. She taught Punjabi to children and women. And I was one of her students, and I learned from her how to read and write Punjabi. And I think this language travels with us. You get uprooted from your geographical space, and you go to a new geographical space, and the language is part of that movement and part of the connection to the older place. And some of us have been in many places, one or two or three places, like me, many members of my family, from Punjab in India to Malaysia, and then to the US, and then some of them went to UK and Australia. But you take your language with you. You take your language with you. And so it's a journey of yourself and your language. And I think that is fantastic, to remember your roots through your language. I contributed a poem of the 7 sisters that I wrote after our sisters' reunion. We sisters are spread out in 3 continents. There are 2 sisters in Malaysia, 3 sisters in England, and 2 sisters here in the US. We keep connected in many ways, including language. And let's see, my grandparents came from Northwest India. They migrated to Malaysia in the early 20th century. And my grandmother teaching Punjabi to us little kids, and she taught us the script as well, which I've never forgotten. So this poem that I wrote it in Gurmukhi, which is the script for Punjabi, and then translated it. That's about all I have to say. I really enjoyed this. It's wonderful to hear all these different languages and listen to you all talking about them. Thank you.
Are you able to see that?
Yes, thank you. Thank you. I'll take the second verse, all right? The one in the middle. And in Punjabi, it says, and I'll translate it in English. Sat Paina Miliyan, 7 sisters met. Ho gaiyan shuru kahaniyan, the stories started flowing. Bahut sara hasiyan, they laughed a lot. Thoda thoda roiyan, they cried a little. Sat Paina Miliyan, 7 sisters met. If you notice in the Punjabi, the lines, each line are the lines end in the same way, with the same endings. But I couldn't do that in English. They don't rhyme at all. So in Punjabi, the ends of the lines rhyme, but not in English. Just wanted you to hear what our language sounded like. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Mohan. That was very interesting.
Ask the kids who are studying Hindi, did you all recognize any of the words? Did any of that sound similar to you?
Did it sound similar?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, so we'll really go quick on this. We wanted to talk a little bit about poetry too, like different aspects of language. And so we do have few members here who could talk about it, but we'll just go through this really quick, just for an idea of what the entries are. And I really, really request everybody in the community to go ahead and check check the exhibit at the International and Area Studies Library. So much more interesting, more than just the exhibit. Just the learning process was really good. Phillip Nyman. So would you like to share with us a little bit about how you work on these?
Sure. Yeah, I've been interested in puzzles my entire life. And one of the interesting things I started thinking about when Kulipa asked me to if I had a couple of contributions for this presentation, is the extent to which puzzles and games actually in some way encapsulate a culture, their aspects of a culture. Kids grow up playing games, and even as adults, we like playing puzzles. And so it's something that I've been thinking about more and more now. And the two things I contributed to the displays, one of these you're looking at, it's my interpretation of the Gordian knot story. I think it's true. I don't want to call it a myth. Apparently it's true. And you can read the story, but I created a puzzle where you're supposed to separate one chain from a tangle of chains without breaking the chain. So this is typical of a kind of disentanglement puzzle, it's called. And so I have a little story, a little history there. And so I've been thinking about how to look at events in history around the world, and to think about sort of puzzles that,
Sorry.
well, really I'm thinking about puzzles that sort of embody a culture.
Thank you so much.
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. So I made this work. Basically, I'm a Brazilian artist. My name is Alice, and I'm also half Japanese. So even though it's not my mother language, Japanese is also a language I study and I identify with some aspects of it. My mother language is Portuguese. So for this work, I was trying to play with some things that I found similar in both. So I picked this one word that's ninguém. So in Portuguese, this word would mean nobody. And in Japanese, a very similar version of the word ninguém, almost the same pronunciation, means actually person or personhood or something like that. So I thought it was just very curious how they seem to have almost conflicting meanings, and they don't have any sort of relation etymologically, as far as I know. It was just something curious that I found, and since I have this closeness to both languages, I wanted to play with both of them. So I wrote it in Japanese with the Japanese characters, and I also wrote it in Roman letters, the Portuguese version.
Beautiful.
So I am a native English speaker, but I have been studying Bangla for the past 8 months now. After having studied Hindi for some time, I wish I'd had a nice group or something to study with, but we read an excerpt of this poem, He Mahajibon, in class, and it's by Sukhant Bhattacharya, and I found it to be really beautiful and inspiring, if maybe somewhat depressing. This poem, Sukhant Bhattacharya, he came after a long tradition of Bengali poets that had this very beautiful flowery language. And in contrast, he wrote in very stark language, which is not a surprise. He died, I think, 1 year after the Great Famine in Bengal. And in this poem, he talks about how in times of hunger, or which I interpret broadly as a deficit, that there's no room for poetry, only unadorned prose. So the last line, if you translate it, it famously reads, to the poor, the full moon is like burnt bread. And if you ask any Bengali person about this poem, many of them know that and can recite almost the entire poem to you, if not the whole thing. So although it's a little bit pragmatic, maybe a little bit sad of a poem, I liked the idea that we can dream of a world where everyone has their daily necessities taken care of so that poetry and art can flourish.
That's beautifully said. And Khushboo, Do you want to tell us about this?
Sure. So I really like painting, and I made this. And since we were doing a multicultural language project, I thought it'd be cool, since there are already stars, if I translated one of a very famous poem from English to my mother tongue, Marathi. And this is how it goes in Marathi. Twinkle, twinkle, छोटीशी star, कोण आहेस तू कसे करणार, फर अभारात तुझे सहवास. Here zadle zanu unsa gaganath. And that's most of the poem translated into Marathi.
That's great. Thank you so much.
Thank you for the invitation, and it's been fantastic. And I like everything that you've done, and that everyone has done and brought their art, and especially the young people, the kids, so brave to get out there and recite or say these things. As Kaldeepa said, I'm involved with the poetry community here in Champaign-Urbana. And of course, the pandemic put us on a bit of a hiatus, but even with that, there are still events where I can come out with a typewriter and sit down and type poems for people, which is a way to I find, to introduce people to poetry who may not have experienced it, or who went to school locally and we're told that it's this big complicated thing and it has to be hard. And I like to write poems that are very accessible, just some basic, very friendly, easy language that they can take with them and hopefully think about it and maybe look for other poems to enrich their lives. Because I think that poetry and language in a very objective form is very enriching. We think in symbols, so poetry communicates with symbols using language. And to hear so many languages and the music in the languages, even when I don't understand the words that I've heard today, I can still feel that music in the words, and it's lovely.
That's beautiful. Thank you.
My concluding remarks will be very brief. Just gratitude for all of you who presented, all of you who attended. I hope that maybe, and I'm springing this on Kaldeepa as a surprise here, but I hope that maybe something like this can be an annual event, because I think it's really great to see such a collaboration between the university and community organizations and community members. We have so much to learn from each other. And for those of you who like poetry and other languages, the International and Area Studies Library has some poetry events coming up at the end of April. So please check our calendar. We're on if you just Google International and Area Studies Library or library.illinois.edu/IAS, you can see our upcoming events. But with that, I'm going to let you all return to your Sunday evenings. Please come check out the exhibit. If there's anything else we can do for you, if you need any international literature, please get in touch. We will be happy to connect university and community members alike with language in their mother tongues, whether that be English or one of the many other beautiful languages of the world. Thank you so much. Have a great night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.